Hello, friends and fellow moms, and welcome to the ninth episode of the Moms on the Air podcast. I'm your host, Katie Mahon, and this is my daughter. If you're watching, you could see this. Joined by my co-host and daughter, Maddie Mann. And this week, I'm so happy to be joined by Kara Kushnir, the owner of A Work of Heart Counseling, to discuss an important topic that's often, pushed aside and really not discussed as much as it needs to be, prenatal and maternal mental health. So, Kara, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. With you, I agree.
No, it definitely, until you become a parent, I think it's one of those things that you don't know until you become a parent or go through pregnancy. And women just, kind of bear the weight of the world on their shoulders. And it's just, you're expected to be okay. You're expected to be raising a child after going through, be 100% after going through however many hours of labor and delivery and recovery. And for you and your experience, what are some common misconceptions about prenatal and maternal mental health, and how can we debunk them?
So I think that what's really interesting is that first of all, I get really excited pregnant because I wish that more women realize that taking care of themselves during pregnancy for postpartum. And when I talk about prenatal and maternal mental health, I think about the perinatal time from conception all the way through the first year post birth. But was the postpartum could be really up to 3 years post birth. So that's interesting. But I think a lot of women just don't care of themselves really holistically, aside from focusing on how am I taking care of myself, to make sure that they're thinking about themselves as a whole person sometimes, of what are they going through. It's a transformation of identity, relationships, career, aspirations, any physical changes, formative experience on the body, obviously, but also on the mind. So just kind of, I think really when you're pregnant, it's about getting ready for really just mother position we don't think about a lot, in the sense that it's kind of one of the really good analogies I think of it is like when you're wedding, but you kind of forget about the marriage, which is like the whole thing after the fact. And so like it's a lot going on, especially for the first time, for first time parents, but even for second time, third time, when you're just, what's it like to do this again? What's my family going to look like? And navigating that, we kind of sometimes forget until, the big picture that we're really entering into and how it's going to affect us. So I think just to care is like so critical, and it does. It's a protective factor actually for that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more on that topic. And like for me, she's actually coming up on her first birthday, and I just remember, you don't even really think about it, the mental toll that you go through during pregnancy, and that you don't really understand, like nothing could prepare you for how much your life is going to change when you have this little person in your life. And in your opinion, how important is it for expectant mothers to prioritize their mental well-being during pregnancy, and what are some practical ways they can do so?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really not really ever talked about, like in any of your prenatal wellness visits, like your OB or midwife is that much about it. They're going to go in, they're going to take your blood pressure, they're going to do your vitals, send you for your labs, do whatever they do. That much about like how much sleep are you getting, how's moving around, how are you feeling about what are you noticing when you look in the mirror. I think something that happens a lot that can come up, and when you're physically changing and it's affecting how you move, how you sleep, what you can feel about food or your body, how you connect with other people, when your family, your friend groups that have children and have been through this before, or not. Challenging experience, sometimes it can feel isolating. So I think a big piece of it is to just connect with people about what you're going through. So if you're pregnant for the first time, or this pregnancy is different, this pregnancy, just being able to talk about what's going on and being open, whether it's with your provider or somebody that you may member, is a really, really important way to take care of your mental health. But I think in addition to that, think about is how can I slow down, even if it's for like 1 minute. And I think it's a really this like, and I'm thinking about this right now because I have an almost 2-year-old, and like I'm watching you and you're a little one, and it's like we're doing everything we can. We're like like literally juggling all the time, and so it's like, and even whether you're pregnant or you are a parent and you're going through another pregnancy or just going through postpartum or motherhood is so critical, and it can be like taking a minute when you're in the car going somewhere, whether it's you're coming home from work, like actually noticing your breath and truly slowing down. A lot of people hear techniques and we think it's all a bunch of like whoa, and it's not really helpful. But when you slow down your body and you do things that can ground your nervous system, that actually does send signals to you. When you're moving really quickly, when you're activated and you're going fast, your nervous system is almost like a Christmas tree. So you can't be calm. You can't be grounded. So doing things to kind of take that time to regulate your nervous system. So taking deep breaths, saying with which you're speaking, moving, what you're doing, how much you're taking on at any given time. That practice of slowing down can really help you to take care of yourself in a different phase of the pregnancy, postpartum journey you're in. So I think that's a big thing about it is the other one. Whether it's to a therapist, it's in a support group, it's to a friend, it's on a Facebook like group or a platform anonymously. Care, just sharing and asking is really important. There's get you through if something is unfamiliar and overwhelming.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And just again, it's one of those things you don't know about until you're pregnant or you become a mom or you go through it and, you survive it. I wish I knew about resources like you and, the great services you provide, sooner, but that's why we're having this conversation. So hopefully fellow moms or future moms, can help themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And just you're talking about before, what are practical ways, to prioritize, your mental well-being during pregnancy. Just kind of switching topics a little bit. What are some red flags or warning signs, in your opinion, that indicate a pregnant woman may be, struggling with mental health challenges, and how can loved ones offer their support?
So I think that what I would say is some of the risk factors are very similar, whether it's in pregnancy, it can look very similar. There's some uniqueness to it. I think that it's in pregnancy, which is, and it's sometimes I should say, just because there's a lot more checking up, you have a lot more visits with your doctor, so it's more likely to get missed in postpartum. So anything I say can apply to more likely that you might experience it in the postpartum period and it could get missed. But things like really sick habits that aren't just due to, hey, I'm uncomfortable, I can't like sleep because it's really big, like things like I can't sleep. If somebody's behavior seems really different, erratic, just feeling really down or depressed, if you're noticing really significant changes to eating with, again, like nausea or hyperemesis or anything like that, but we're talking just like things that look like low mood. A really big common one too is anxiety. I would say anxiety symptoms, a lot of asking for reassurance, like researching things, ask, hey, what do you think this means? What does this mean? Googling things. I noticed this feels this way. I think I seconds, like those kind of feelings of being unsure of yourself and feeling worried, that kind of like a perinatal anxiety. And I would argue perinatal anxiety, whether you're probably more just as common, sometimes more common than postpartum depression or perinatal depression together. And then also, I think things like just noticing if someone feels that can look like somebody not knowing what to say or how to say something. If you know, a risk flag too for some of these things is if somebody's gone through a prior loss. So if somebody experienced before this pregnancy or some sort of loss related to their experience in the perinatal, anxious going into it, they may have had a traumatic experience that can make them more likely to going on, or have depression following that, and it can be an ongoing process. So really just things that look like responses in their behavior. There's a really good resource, and I'll talk about this later, I'm sure. Postpartum Support International has a really good one-pager. If you're like, I don't know what to look for, like in my loved one, they have a really good resource on their website that literally is an infographic that shows you like body, and a lot of it is mood changes, sleep changes, diet changes, changes in communication. But it's just a really good thing to refer back to if you're like, I'm not sure, could this thing I'm seeing fit in? I wish that like that was just given out to like every pregnant person in their pregnancy, so they could normalize, hey, like this might happen to you, because we know it happens to one. So it's more than 10%. It could happen that you experience this. Let you know that it's common, and if you experience it, it's okay to get help. And here's what it might look like for you to know. That's just a really good resource as well for people who like that visual of how to notice it.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I definitely will research. I'd love to see that, that infographic, and yeah, I think kind of talking about postpartum a little bit. Um, you know, how do you help people get through it? I mean, like or how do people? I don't even think you could prepare for it, but how would you help someone get through it, prepare for it?
Yeah. So I'm excited when someone comes in and they are pregnant and they haven't going to have, so if they already have some sort of perinatal mood or anxiety disorder, or some sort of at a greater risk to experience some sort of difficulty in the postpartum period. So this can actually set them on a journey. But when I get someone who's in the postpartum period of their life, I think really just hold space for them. One of the things that we talk about and we learn, and there's a really good book, folks in the perinatal mental health world, and it talks about the idea of holding the mother. This thing that a lot of folks feel, whether they have something going on like an baby, or they're just really struggling with baby blues, or this transition into motherhood. There's so much holding of the mother during pregnancy. There's all this excitement. There's the bump picture. There's a lot of like sort of glamorization of the experience, and to some extent, some of it's really great. I think it's all about getting ready for this entrance into the world of the baby, and then afterwards, it's kind of like there's a baby in me, and so like making the mom feel like you're just as important, nothing changed, and you deserve too is so important. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I remember like my labor was about like 36 hours, and I remember going there, going through this after, and then kind of having moments where I was saying, oh, where's the baby, and then obviously I had family who were concerned about me, but like I said, what about me? I just got I had a C-section, and I just it's something I think a lot of moms have to deal with, and then you're just expected to be okay, and you're expected to be 100%, and you're not.
Sure, I totally agree. It's the expectations are what's unfair, and that's exactly, I think, it's interesting. I think even in the United States is the expectation of snap back, get back to work. Like there's not a lot of recognition of that, the need for that time to heal, wound in your body, and it's like, okay, well, it's fine, and like just take care of this, like don't have any needs, you'll be fine. And it's ridiculous because there's so much going on, and I think realization of that and how common it is a really, really big way that I think we can support each other as women and moms. I think that's a huge thing. Like when people come in, I think that's something that I feel good about, is that I offer that awareness of it, and it's really it's not something that is just because I'm a therapist. Like we can do that as other moms and sort of normalize giving each other that credit and that space to heal and offering support. What we always say, it takes a village, and we're all like, well, where's my village? Because in the US you kind of have to hire your village. Challenging and expensive.
Yeah, it's a rude awakening, and then you have the whole concept about going back to work, what that looks like, with daycare, with it's a lot. And then it's finding that balance is just, it's tough. And
Yep.
obviously the baby agrees with
She
with
knows,
that.
man. Yeah.
Amen.
She knows.
And Kara, in your opinion, how does prenatal and maternal mental health impact the overall well-being of both the mother and the baby? And are there any long-term effects to consider?
Sure. I think that what's really important is that if you're pregnancy or in the postpartum period as the mom, it makes it harder at times. Find a healthier transition into motherhood. You can find it harder to attach to your baby and bond. Especially, like you mentioned, you had an emergency C-section. I had a planned C-section, and I think sometimes when like 1 in 3 women will say that their birth was traumatic, and going through actually giving birth can feel traumatic for folks. There's a real need, I acknowledge, that people are not always entering motherhood in the best like themselves and feeling well. And so if we can prioritize that as part of the recovery process and bond more effectively, and that's good for both of them. It also is important because if your mental health is not as difficult, so like if you really want to breastfeed and you've been through something really difficult or had a medical complication and you assess that, you can feel like it's your fault if like you're not producing enough. I hear that a lot, or getting overwhelmed, or not knowing that there is an actual condition that's overwhelming to you that's called DMERS, that dysphoric milk reflex. Like you can feel like there's this sense of like, I can't, oh my God, why is this so upsetting to me? And it's like, that's a real talk about them. It can really affect you and your relationship. And I think the biggest one I always like to acknowledge too, going a mental health need, is that if it's not taken care of, it's, I always say healthy mom, healthy. The thing I like to really normalize too and acknowledge is safe is that if somebody is taking that they needed prior to pregnancy and it's acknowledged as being safe, especially certain type of psychotic needs, an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication, and it's keeping them healthy and sometimes the doctors don't always know, they're not always up to date on it, but it's okay to take medication and breastfeeding. There's a lot of really good resources out there to research certain medications. Mud is a great one. And, keeping yourself well is going to not only help the health, it's going to make it an easier journey for you in the postpartum period, and have that relationship be a little bit more connected to your baby. Even if you're not feeling well, it can help you overall. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and last question for you, talking about resources, besides the ones you've mentioned already, are there any other resources, support groups, services like you provide that you'd recommend to pregnant women who are struggling with their mental health, along with mothers?
Absolutely. So I think a couple of things I would say are, Support International not only has some really good infographics and information, but they also have support groups that are online. They're free. So that's something I would highly recommend. And there's different ones for different reasons. There's postpartum period, but there's also ones for pregnancy after loss. Individuals maybe they are, and there's also ones for people who are struggling with part of their journey with trying to get pregnant, or maybe they are experiencing a pregnancy following a bad point because of infertility. So all these different types of resources. Also looking into located, like, does your hospital that you're going to deliver at have a support group? A lot of them do. There's a lot of different organized. I totally recommend people check out like mommy and me groups and stuff like that. That might be it's about finding community. Like that's what's really, really important. And I think a lot of the times too, provider's office, they may have a social worker who's there who can guide you, or at least the hospital can, or even births often know about some of these resources. There's a lot of, I know it sounds funny, but a ton of Facebook groups in your individual area. Even like joining, sometimes it's for better or worse, but even like joining a due date, just talking to other moms who are going through it too, so that when you're like up at 3 o'clock in the morning because you're back at the third trimester, you can just post and someone responds. Like it's just
Yeah, I remember
having
for
that
me,
community.
I use the What to Expect app. They have like a lot of chat boards on that, and
Yeah.
sometimes I found it helpful, and then other times it
Yeah.
was
It
not
depends on
helpful. It
depends
just caused
on
you
what
to
it is.
worry.
Yeah. Yeah. Too. It's
So,
like being
so
selective.
Kara, what's the best way for if someone was interested in working with you or learning more about you? What's the best way for people to find out more about you?
Sure. So www.aworkofheartcounseling.com. They could also follow a work of heart underscore counseling. And then also, if people are located in, I know you found me because a friend of mine tagged me for hosting darkness in New Jersey. Where there's that isn't an international event, the darkness event that is also available on the PSI, the Postpartum Sport International website, and it's a fun day for us. It's usually a walk and a family fun day for other people too. And it's a way to meet other people who are going through what you're going through. As far as like, yeah, people can reach out to me on the website. They can reach out to us on social media or just follow us for some, and it normalizes what motherhood is all about, and that you're not alone. You're not to blame if you're struggling better with help, and reach out. You're allowed to. And that's really the message we're trying to promote overall.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time today, sharing your insight with us, your wisdom. I appreciate you. So does the baby. And we wish you the best. Hope you will join us for a future episode. And
Sure.
for our listeners, and for our listeners, thank you for tuning in today. I hope you'll join us next week, and be sure to follow our official Instagram account at Moms on the Air, where we will share who our next guest will be. And thanks again for joining. And if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe wherever you're listening. Give us a 5-star rating. Even mention how you like the screaming baby in the comments. Until next time, I'm Katie. This is Maddie, and we are the Moms on the Air podcast.